All right, so how's everybody doing? I just wanted to jump on and I want to talk about the next step in this phase of how we got to where we are, and we're going to talk about the informal physical or the formal physical evaluation board, and we're going to talk about their findings and how they came to their decisions that they came with, and this is where the Navy really starts doing wrong. So before that, I want to apologize to everybody. So last night I went on a lot of the Facebook groups that I belong to as a veteran and a service member, and I shared the link to the iPhone that I'm trying to auction off to help me raise money so I can mount up my legal defense against that. And it became very clear that I shouldn't ask for help from service members or anyone, because I basically got destroyed last night. So I had a couple admirals who completely picked me apart, explained to the fact that I was violating laws and everything else. And then I've had people that have told me that these videos are horrible and I need to hire a PR firm. Well, I can't even afford a lawyer, so how am I gonna do that? And I need to brush up my scripts and blah, blah, blah. Well, this isn't a script, this is my life. And I'm trying to tell the story of what I'm dealing with the best I can. So I apologize if it's coming off wrong or raw or whatever, right? But this is an issue that's happening, and the Navy's completely ignoring like policy that they've put out, right? So they said they were supposed to give liberal leaning when it came to separation for post-traumatic stress disorder and mental injuries, and they continue to not do that. So I apologize if I've made anyone angry or upset anyone, because I'm in the fight for my life. And so I'm just trying to do what I can to get there. I don't have family I could go to for money like this. I don't have like a big bank account that I can go pull from. I don't have a 401k. I'm pretty well maxed out on my credit. So that's why I'm asking for help. And I think this fight's worth fighting. And so it's why I'm asking people to just help. And I'm trying to not be like greedy about it, right? So $20,000 is what it costs to hire a lawyer for this type of case. I am looking for pro bono lawyers that are out there, but none of them are interested in cases like this. They don't do military law. They don't practice at the courts that you have to take these cases to. It's just not something that they do. Or there's a really long wait list, and I have a time frame where I have to file my appeal by in order to get to the court that I need to get in front of. And so my only option is to try to come up with $20,000. So I watched these raffle pages and everything, and I seen they're very successful, and I was like, well, hey, maybe someone want to try to buy a chance on an iPhone. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not, and I've got it set to where like there's 500 spots, and that puts us right at like $7 over the amount that I need to hire a lawyer. So it's like it's enough money to pay for the iPhone. I paid like $30 for the comment section on my webpage that I didn't have before, and then and then I needed $20,000 for the lawyer fee. So I'm trying not to take advantage of anyone, and then I pulled 6 spots so that I don't make $250, and I'm gonna give them away to people who are interested and who help me, right? A lot of people have commented, hey, I want to help you, but I can't afford it. So I'm going to take some people like that, and I'm going to do a private raffle, and I'm going to put your names on the list for to get on the list, because I appreciate everyone who's been sharing my story out there, right? So I'm nothing special, all right? What I did was I guarded prisoners in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I came home. And I'm very lucky that I came home, because a lot of people didn't. And a lot of people came home without limbs, and I'm very fortunate that I didn't have to deal with that. But I also struggle. I struggle my own way. I struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder. I struggle with anxiety and depression. I've lost friends over the years because of these issues, because I didn't realize I had these problems. I've been very mean to people because of the way I was when I first got home, and I'm trying to fix that. I tried to, my wife helped me realize that these were things I was struggling with, and I'm trying to fix it. So, but at the same time, I've asked for help from the Navy, and up until the point that we talked about today, they were willing to work. Like they agreed with me. They agreed I had problems from my tours of duty, and they agreed that I didn't have the right resiliency training to come home with what I dealt with. So, so prior to this, the Navy authorized me to go get help because they thought that I had something wrong with me from my combat tour of duty. They approved that. They said yes. I went to Walter Reed. Walter Reed starts treating me. I get recommended to go to the Medical Evaluation Board. The Medical Evaluation Board finds that I have severe post-traumatic stress and migraines, and that I don't meet medical retention standards to stay in the Navy, and that I need to be recommended for a separation board. So I go to the separation board, and they come back and they say, you're not on medication, and therefore you're fine, your command likes you, so we're going to send you back to the Navy, and we hope you work out well. So I come back and I dispute, and this is what leads up today. So I dispute that, and I say, hey, listen, I know you say I'm not on medication, but I am. I'm on a procedure called stellate ganglion block, and I'm about to start ketamine infusion therapy. And these are approved medical procedures, and therefore I am on medication. I would like for you to review my case. So the board comes back, and they decide that instead of addressing the fact that I'm on medication, they start off by holding a board. And this is the hardest day of my life, because now I have to go before a board of senior officers, and I have to tell them why I can no longer serve in the Navy. And that's not something that's easy for me, because I want to serve in the Navy, but I know that I'm not the sailor that I need to be, that they need me to be in the Navy. So I have to explain it to them, and I have to talk about the things that I went through and what I seen, and the different issues. And so I had to have some character witnesses of that. And so one of the character witnesses of that was my wife. One of them was my employer, Rear Admiral Gary Hall. Another one was my service officer from the Fleet Reserve Association, Chris Lewinsky. And we also had Captain Ken Ireland, who called in for the board, as well as Sam Wilson from McLeansboro, and then Master Chief Tom Snee, who was the head of the Fleet Reserve Association at the time. Okay, not a single person from my command was there to support me during this. Not a single person from Navy Safe Harbor was there to support me during this. And so the board convenes, and I read a statement, and I talk about how I want to serve in the Navy, but I can no longer continue to do the job that I'm trained to do with the mental illness that I'm struggling with. It's just not safe for me. It's not safe for the Navy, and it's not safe for my shipmates. And so they come into their, and I'm reading like right off of like their diagnosis. So they come in and they start reading off of discrepancies in my case. So the first discrepancy that they have is they talk about how after my tour of duty in Iraq, I volunteered to go to Afghanistan. And that's absolutely true, because whenever I was in Iraq, I went home to San Diego for a couple weeks. I went to McLeansboro for a couple days, and then I didn't fit in. Like, I was not getting along well with people. I didn't fit in. And I felt better in Iraq than I did whenever I was in theater. So what did I do while I was in Iraq? I volunteered to go to Afghanistan, right? I put in a request to transfer me to Afghanistan, and the Navy approved it. They said, absolutely, you want to go to Afghanistan? We'll send you there. They sent me home for 3 months, and then I went back to training, same job, detention operations, went to a different place for training, and then they sent me to Afghanistan. Well, during that time, my friends started committing suicide. I started feeling kind of weird and bad and all types of things. And it became a struggle. And so I was struggling to even get through a day. So my commander officer was like, hey, listen, you've been going through a lot. Why don't we send you to mental health, and you can do some counseling? Sure, not a problem. So I get over there, and I'm talking to this doctor, right? And I don't know I have PTSD. I don't know what PTSD is, right? So I'm talking about like family issues I'm having. I'm talking about like how nobody fucking wants to talk to me. Nobody likes me. I'm talking about struggles that I'm having, like with readjustment and stuff, and how I just went home and I'm not getting along with anything. And like that was my issue, right? I was telling them all this. And so ding, ding, ding. That's the first sign of like someone who has PTSD is all these things. So they come back and they go, service member is seen in theater, but doesn't mention anything about having PTSD. Well, no crap. I didn't even know I had it at the time. I was still in combat. I'm still getting rocket-propelled mortars blown in on us on a regular basis, right? A couple months after this, I start, like, the terrorists broke into our base and attacked the Special Forces compound, and I think we went on lockdown for about 7 hours while we were getting attacked, and freaking detainees are, like, going crazy in their cells. Like, we locked that place down. And, like, it was a madhouse, right? So, of course, I'm not talking about detention operations while I'm there. I'm still living the nightmare, but I'm like gung-ho, and I'm like trying to get done with it, right? So these are the things that like I didn't want to talk about. So these are the things I didn't talk about. They're accusing me of. So then they said, despite the fact that I was suffering from issues that I experienced in Iraq, and despite my CEO telling me that I probably shouldn't go to Afghanistan, I still went. That is like the most common thing for anyone who's been in combat, right? So those of us that got into combat and then we got the bug, we didn't want to stop going. I would have kept going. And in fact, there's proof a couple like years later, like in fact, a year after me and Liz started getting together, I tried to volunteer to go to Kuwait. I tried to volunteer to go back to Iraq. I didn't care. I wanted to go somewhere. I felt like I needed to be a part of it again. So I was trying to go back. That is a common sign of someone that's struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. Not something that we should be penalizing these service members for. Not something that we should be treating them as if they're criminals because they want to continue serving. Yeah, I should have listened to Captain Ireland, and I didn't. And I regret it sometimes, but not really because I loved the job that I did whenever I was there. It sucked, but I loved it. I mean, I was serving my country. They talk about how, and again, like, I'm just like going through the list here. If you want to read the full document, it's on the website. They talk about how my CEO, like, tried to encourage me not to do it. And even though, like, he went really far out of his way to try to get me out of this. So, like, he set up like a talking group at the reserve center of people who had been in this job. And, like, they're trying to talk me out of going. And I'm like, nah, you guys are crazy. Like, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm going to go anyway. Right? So, and that's how that went. So then they tell me that whenever I came home from my deployment in 2009 from Iraq and then in 2010 from Afghanistan, I told them I didn't have anything wrong with me. Ding, ding, ding. This is another issue. This is another thing that service members do on a regular basis, right? So we go into combat for 7, 9, 18 months, right? My deployments were all 9-month-long deployments. There were 12-month-long deployments, but 9 months in theater and then a couple weeks break in between there. So we're in theater and then they bring us home, right? So they bring us home. They send us to like Dallas or Atlanta or wherever, and then they fly us to a base. No one's there to greet us. No one's there to welcome us home. It's just kind of freaking weird, right? So what happens? I get to Gulfport, Mississippi. Well, first I get let's see, where did I demob? Oh yeah, I think I demobbed in Gulfport, Mississippi both times. So I demobbed in Gulfport, Mississippi, and I didn't want to be there. None of us did. We all wanted to go home. So what did we tell them? We're like, oh, we're fine. We're going to go home. I'm going to Afghanistan in a couple months. Send me home because you're wasting my time. I'm not staying here for a couple weeks. If I tell you there's anything wrong with me, you're going to keep me. So I'm not going to tell you I have nightmares and all this other stuff. I apologize. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have done that. But I didn't. And that was my fault. But again, these are issues that people were struggling with PTSD didn't want to admit to. Because at the time, I was worried I'd lose my security clearance. Worried I'd getting kicked out of the Navy. Right? I didn't want to deal with that. So the next thing I did was I demobilized from Afghanistan. And let's talk about how hell of a day that was, right? So I'm in Afghanistan, and then I'm in Kuwait for 3 or 4 days, turn in my gun, and then they send me to Gulfport, Mississippi. Well, guess what happened on the second day we were there? One of our shipmates died in a car crash. So here I have served in combat with this guy for 9 months. We've seen hell together. We went through hell together. And then he dies in a car crash 48 hours after we get back into American soil. Do you think I wanted to stay in Gulfport, Mississippi after that? I wanted to go home. I wanted to go see my family. I wanted to get the hell out of there, right? So they blame this. They tell me these are the reasons why I don't have PTSD. So they talk about that. Then they don't even like. Well, so they did address the fact that I said that I was struggling with anxiety and nightmares and difficulty sleeping and all that other stuff. But they said because I didn't ask for help, there was nothing wrong with me. So the board had difficulty reconciling my timeline. They stated that while I was in Iraq, that I didn't have an opportunity, or I'm sorry, they stated that while I was in Iraq, I didn't guard leaders of ISIS, right? And so I didn't realize they were leaders of ISIS when I was there, but I was in Camp Bucca whenever they formed ISIS. And I guarded many of the people that were there. I was in charge of death row detainees that were there. And so whenever I tell the board this, they go back and they say, there were no riots and it's right here. They said there were no riots in Camp Bucca while you were there. There were no ISIS leaders in Camp Bucca while you were there. And you basically, you were there during a peaceful time. So what you're saying here doesn't make sense. Well, I disputed that. And I didn't just dispute it with like a few facts. My freaking commanding officer like tore into them for this, right? And they still dispute that. We'll talk about them denying that later. But so then they get to my co-workers, Master Chief Michael Nyblack and Rear Admiral Gary Hall, who both like talked about how they've seen me struggle with anxiety and depression, and my boss has to give me special circumstances, and my coworkers are angry at me because my boss is allowing me to work from home because I can't like drive sometimes because my anxiety gets so bad. So they talk about that, but then they say, but everybody likes him. I mean, he goes to Capitol Hill and everyone likes him, and he does this and everyone likes him. But, you know, he struggles. Like, they commend me for being able to struggle with all the things that I'm struggling with, but then gain my composure enough to, like, fight for my shipmates. And the board basically doesn't mention any of that. They don't mention any of these issues. They just said that, basically, my admiral says that I'm like his Swiss Army knife. I can lobby Capitol Hill one day and like, unclog his toilets the next. And I can change light bulbs and brief members of a board. And that's exactly what they said. They say that because I'm able to do this, there's no reason why I can't continue serving in the United States Navy. They talk about how I continued to sustain employment. Well, that was great until about 9 or 10 months ago, whenever my entire life freaking fell apart. And I reflashed and I started getting depressed again. Well, I've lost all my clients. Now I don't have much income at all. I'm basically living on my disability and my GI Bill because I'm trying to finish my bachelor's degree because I had to fall back on something. So they were wrong on that. In addition to maintaining full-time employment, this is where they start talking about my wife. They say, my wife testified that he has created his own nonprofit entity where he volunteers to assist veterans with understanding the myriad benefits available to them. Though through his work, he stated he is exposed to vicarious traumatization where he hears stories of others veterans' combat experience. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say to that other than I've been screwed. My shipmates have been screwed. So I'm willing to listen to other veterans tell me why they've been screwed and try to help them the best I can. It sucks. They said that the board found the testimony of the member's wife particularly informative as she witnesses the member in a wider range of environments than his coworkers. She discussed how her husband enjoys World War II documentaries but avoids movies set in current-day Middle East, as well as news programs about ISIS. She noted how he is generally happy, how he is generally a happy individual, but becomes quieter when doing his pro bono work for veterans. She also discussed their social activities to include camping, visiting museums, and bowling with friends, as well as their more recent work preparing the nursery for their first child due in a few months. She stated she could not remember the member having a nightmare or waking up from a nightmare. When questioned about the member waking up at odd hours and remaining awake, the member's wife could not recall the member waking up and remaining up. To the contrary, she testified that the member was typically asleep when she arose in the mornings to prepare for work. I mean, am I supposed to wake my wife up every time I have a nightmare? am I supposed to wake my wife up and go, hey, I know you got to go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I can't sleep. You want to go downstairs and hang out with me? Am I supposed to like wake up when she wakes up and go, hey, I've only been asleep for an hour, so I'm probably going to sleep late today? No, not at all. That's not even a normal thing for someone to do in any situation. My wife knows I have sleep issues, but she also is testifying against a board that I'm crying at. Probably the first time I've cried in a lot of time, and she wants to protect me. So this is bullshit. This is what they wrote as bullshit. The member's wife witnessed a motor vehicle accident in 2014 in which a car struck and killed a pedestrian. It happened. We watched it happen, and that's when I got re-triggered. The member suffered a flashback at this time, and his mental health decomposed acutely. He relied on his support network to help get him into psychiatric care with the VA in a timely manner. He has since continued treatment and returned to the performance level at work discussed above, including earning a promotion in 2015. So it happened, right? So I did go get help, and I was doing better. All right. And in summary, the member has a diagnosis of PTSD according to medical documentation. Based on the evidence continued with this case file, and after listening to the member and the witnesses, the formal board determined the member's condition does not preclude him from reasonable performance of his duties. Therefore, the board finds that the member is fit for continued naval service. They also go on to say this member suffers from migraine headaches, which is supported by his medical documentation. His wife and coworkers all mention concern about these headaches, and they have caused him to miss hours of work. He has recently found relief with receiving stellate ganglion blocks, and this monthly therapy could make deployment difficult. But finding unfit is not, per instruction, to be based on deployability alone. The member did not have a line of duty benefit for this condition. Conclusion, the member is fit for naval service. So I did have, so like what they don't want to do is they don't want to say, well, your migraines are probably part of your PTSD. I did have a line of duty for post-traumatic stress. They did agree that I was not fit for duty to continue. So they went from, remember the other day I told you about how the board found that I was fit for duty because I was not on medication. Okay? I was fit for duty because I was not on medication. So now I've presented to them documents that I'm on medication, different type of medication than what they're used to. They're used to pills, and I'm getting shots and infusions and Botox. And now they're saying, by the way, we don't agree with you because we think you're lying about your service. We don't think you did the things you did while you were in combat. And your wife says you're a good person. You like to go bowling and camping and fishing. Your coworkers like you when you're at work. And your boss liked you enough to give you a promotion. He's an admiral. But they completely cherry-picked the entire board process. So I appealed this decision with facts. I appealed it with documents from my commanding officer, my executive officer, from my base colonel, medical documentation from my doctors at Walter Reed, medical documentation from a provider, expert in the care that started stellate ganglion block. He wrote a letter on my behalf explaining how it's a new procedure. He worked actually at Fort Belvoir for the wounded care unit there. So he wasn't my doctor, but he was still a DOD doctor who worked closely with my doctor. And then we also provided clarifications on why service members hide things from their loved ones, why service members don't want everyone to know that they have post-traumatic stress disorder, and the links that they go to try to prevent that. And so we provided all that, and that goes into what I'll talk about tomorrow. That's with the petition of relief from the board. It'll be, so there's two more things that happen. So the next thing I do is I file a petition to the president of the Physical Evaluation Board, and clearly it didn't go in my favor. And then after that, I filed for a Board of Naval Corrected Records review based on Secretary of Defense instruction that said that liberal decisions should be given to service members with PTSD. And basically, they came back and they said they didn't even address any of the stuff I brought up. So apologize, it's long. I've been told that they're too long. I apologize, but I'm trying to tell my story. So I understand if you don't want to stick around for the full time, but I appreciate everyone's support. I appreciate you trying to help me. I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for my shipmates that struggle with this. And I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to quit. I don't want to give up. And so I'm going to keep pushing. If you could help me, share the video, share the link to the phone. Who doesn't want a free iPhone, right? So $45, you get a chance to win an iPhone, and we're going to give it away. So, and by the way, we're going to give it away anyway, right? So we're almost to the point where we have enough money that we can buy the phone, and then everything we make over is money that'll go towards my lawsuit, and I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you do for me. I appreciate everything. So appreciate y'all. Love you. See you about the fleet.